Welcome to this week's edition of Bowl Season Stories. I'm Nick Carparelli, the Executive Director of Bowl Season, and each week different guests from the world of college football join me to talk about current topics in the sport, as well as discuss what they remember most about their bowl game experiences. Today, we are joined by SEC Network lead host Dari Nowkhah, former Texas Longhorn and NFL safety Kenny Vaccaro, and Executive Director of the Inaugural Wasabi Fenway Bowl, Fred Olsen. Today's show is brought to you by TaxAct, the official tax filing software of Bowl Season. Also joining me as she does each week is our on-air producer, Angela Lang. Angela, we've been counting down the months, the weeks, the days to Bowl Season. We're at the point now where it's hours and minutes. How exciting is this?
It's so exciting. I have mixed emotions because it's sad because college football season is almost over and you just don't want to go those months without it. But this is the time when it really counts. It's bowl season, and Nick, your team has really owned the season. You guys are doing so many things to bring bowl season to everyone.
Well, we like to say that bowl season owns December. We've done a lot of work since the kickoff of this season to start promoting it and leading into bowl season in ways we haven't done before. This podcast is one example. This is our 16th podcast we've done. We've heard so many great stories from people who have participated in bowl games about their memories, and we're going to see more memories coming to life this starting on Friday for the next 3 weeks.
Yes, and I think that our first guest, Dari Nowkhah, host and anchor of the SEC Network, has a little bit to say about bowl season, considering how many teams from the SEC are appearing in bowl games. Dari, it's so great to have you here.
Angela, Nick, thank you guys. It's great to be with you all, and yeah, this is a great time for us as a conference network for sure to have 13 of our 14 teams get in, and it's a record, and some of them, we didn't expect. We didn't expect South Carolina to make a bowl game, for one. I mean, that was certainly a surprise. We didn't know if Missouri was going to kind of squeak their way in, and they did. To see Tennessee take great strides under Josh Heupel in year number one, awesome to see that too. And Mississippi State and Arkansas to continue the positive momentum that they have with Mike Leach and Sam Pittman, respectively. So it's been a great story, a great season for our conference for sure.
Dari, thanks again for joining us. We're going to obviously get back to bowl season specifically, but you've worked for ESPN since 2004. I'm guessing you've probably appeared on every one of their platforms at one time or another. Yeah. Most of your work's been covering college athletics. Let's talk about this season just for a moment. It seems to me like college football is more popular than it's ever been. Am I right, or do I just have a biased viewpoint?
I think that every year, it's funny because, you hear the stories in the off season, certain stadiums aren't selling out or whatever. I mean, I think we need to remember we're coming out of a pandemic, or that we're actually still in. So to see full stadiums still, I think it's as popular as it's ever been, for sure. I think what we do on our network, what we see on ESPN's college football work, Fox's college football work, look, the ratings show. It is absolutely, I think, certainly as popular as it's ever been. And you have a season like this where, you get some of the unpredictability. 2 new teams in the college football playoff that have never been there before is certainly exciting. Watching teams like Michigan get past Ohio State finally, and seeing a group of 5 team get into the playoff for the first time. And again, the stories of teams that, like a Shane Beamer leading South Carolina to a bowl game when they were expected to have 3 or 4 wins. There's a lot of reason for optimism from fan bases around the country, and renewed optimism of fan bases that might have thought, here we go again. No, you're not. You're doing something new, and that's a great thing.
You mentioned earlier 13 of the 14 SEC teams being in bowl game. That's obviously a record. One of the things I love about bowl season is the great matchups that you see. Oftentimes you see teams who wouldn't normally schedule each other match up in a bowl game, the conference versus conference matchups. Besides the obvious CFP games for Alabama and Georgia, what are some of the other games that you're looking most forward to watching?
Yeah, I think there are games where you kind of want to see how teams come out. I would say if you're Florida, for all intents and purposes, this was a disappointing season. You're 6-6. You weren't supposed to be 6-6. Now you go into a bowl game in Tampa against UCF. I think it would be easy to look at this and say, okay, UCF is going to want nothing more than to be, one of the big boys in the state. Florida needs to be careful. I kind of like that matchup. I think it's an intriguing, interesting matchup. I've mentioned them a couple of times because I've just come to really appreciate what they've done in a short time. South Carolina, North Carolina. North Carolina comes into the season top 10 team or top 15. They get into the top 10. They might have flirted with the top 5, if I remember correctly. And South Carolina wasn't supposed to really do anything. Again, great opportunity for a team in this league to kind of make a statement win. So, if I'm looking at a couple that jump out to me for varying reasons, one, I want to see Florida come out with the intensity that it frankly showed against Florida State. And I thought that was encouraging. And I want to see what South Carolina is able to do against a team that, at least on paper and in terms of experience and perceived talent, is a bit ahead of them. So, though that's kind of what I like about bowl season too. I want to see teams that are playing for everything. I want to see teams that are playing like it's their last game. I want to see teams that are playing to help prepare them and launch them in the next season. And that's what excites me. Yes, the cross-conference matchups are certainly great, but I want to see what teams come out and look like from a motivation and from an excitement level. And I'm curious to see those two for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think depending on your program, bowl season can mean one of two things. It could be an ending to the current season and a reward for a great season you've had, or it could be serve as a launching pad for the next season. You get some younger guys, a little more experience. Even the teams that have a new head coach, it gives that coach a chance to watch their guys and evaluate them.
Yeah, and those are players that are playing for that new head coach. Those are often players, and maybe the story that people don't want to tell. Those are players that may be playing for another coach somewhere else if the new coach is not exactly running that kind of an offense or running the kind of a defense that might work better for an edge rusher. You never know. And also, by the way, those assistant coaches that are still coaching on that staff, they don't know what the immediate future holds. They're coaching for their careers as well. So, bowl season kind of presents different motivating factors than you would typically get in most regular season games.
What's the SEC network coverage like for you guys during bowl season? It's considering that the SEC teams are in over a quarter of the bowl games. Tell us what the next 3 weeks are going to be like for you.
Yeah, it's going to be, we'll have our normal studio show, SEC Now, 3 to 4 times a week, where we're certainly showing highlights of the bowl games. We're really ramping up for the playoff. We'll have 2 crews going since we've got 2 teams in the playoffs. So our SEC Nation crew will be in Dallas, covering Alabama, Cincinnati. Our SEC Now crew, which includes myself, we will be in Miami with full coverage of Georgia, Michigan, the pregame leading up to it, the news conferences leading up to it. The game itself obviously won't be on our network, but we'll have post-game show on the 31st of December that cover both of the games in Dallas and in Miami, and getting us ready for the New Year's Day bowl games as well. So, we'll have a ton of coverage over the course of the next few weeks, but it'll really ramp up as we get those 2 semifinals going.
Now, on the personal side for you, you grew up in Oklahoma, graduated from Oklahoma. What do you think of your alma mater's matchup with Oregon in the Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, and it's a program. Both of them have found themselves to be programs in flux with head coaching changes. So I like the matchup. I'm kind of curious to see if Caleb Williams. We're not so sure if the super freshman, a lot of us, is going to stay at Oklahoma. We certainly hope he does. And so if he does, great. We're thrilled to have him there, and I would like to see how he does against Oregon. It's not, again, if you're Oklahoma or Oregon for that matter, it may not necessarily be where you thought you'd be at the end of the year, but here you are. And again, it's an opportunity for players to play for a new coach, to really, in a big moment against really good competition, to have a standout game that makes an immediate impression to a new coach and a new staff.
This podcast is called Bowl Season Stories. So Dari, tell us some of yours. Do you remember what was your first impression of bowl games when you were a kid, watching them on TV this time of year? Did you go to bowl games when you were a kid? And what are some of the more memorable ones you've covered as part of your job?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So I did not go to them as a kid. I grew up in Tulsa. We didn't have anything really around us in terms of a bowl game. But as Oklahoma fans, the first ones I remember watching were Orange Bowls. That Big 8 champion. You beat Nebraska at the end of the year. You're going to the Orange Bowl. You're likely playing for a national championship. I remember beating Washington uh, in a big bowl. I remember the Oklahoma Miami games, the Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson Orange Bowls. Unfortunately, we didn't win many of those. Miami cost us a couple of national championships. I remember big Oklahoma Penn State Orange Bowl. I just, those are the ones that I remember. It seemed like as an Oklahoma fan, and when you're a kid, you're 8, 9, 10 years old. Um, it felt honestly in that state like that was the only bowl game because that was the one everybody talked about. Got to get through the season, got to beat Nebraska, then you're off and you're playing for a championship. So from a fan as a kid, those are the ones that I remember most. I do remember Oklahoma State, Wyoming in a Holiday Bowl jumping out to me and Barry Sanders rushing for over 200 yards and I think was like a 62-50 something Oklahoma State win. That one jumps out to me.
The Holiday Bowl kind of developed a reputation for a
Right.
while, having those really high scoring games.
Great games too. And because you get the West Coast team and the Big 12 team. I remember the great Texas Bowl games. Kenny Vaccaro probably remembers a lot of those out in the Holiday Bowl as well. From a work standpoint, well, not from, first of all, the Oklahoma Boise State, I was not covering that when that Fiesta Bowl, which was everybody was like, oh my God, as an Oklahoma fan, that must have been tough to watch that Boise State game. And I said, no, like it gave me a reason to make sure I was awake and watching that game because I'm glad I got to see that stuff happen in real life. The 4th down hook and ladder, the 2-point conversion, halfback toss. And then obviously the Statue of Liberty end around where Ian Johnson runs into the end zone, wins the game in overtime and proposes to his girlfriend, who's a cheerleader for Boise State. Like that was incredible. And really the most exciting one I'd seen live or in person until the 2017 season, 2018, January 1st, Rose Bowl, national semifinal, Oklahoma, Georgia. I'm there for work covering Georgia out of the SEC, an Oklahoma grad, and everything inside of me certainly rooting for the Sooners in a game that went to double overtime and ended with a Sony Michel touchdown run to send Georgia to the national championship game against Alabama. I remember being there with Matt Stinchcomb, who's a Georgia grad, and Chris Doring, my partner on SEC Network, who went to Florida, who was wholeheartedly rooting for Georgia. I remember standing next to the commissioner, Greg Sankey, who, when Oklahoma scored on the first touchdown from Baker Mayfield to Hollywood Brown, he knew who I was rooting for on the inside, and he kind of gives me a little punch into the shoulder saying, watch yourself, buddy. That's not our conference, It was an incredible experience to get to go to a Rose Bowl with that much on the line and to see the greatest game I've ever seen in person to this day.
Very, very vivid memories you have.
That was kind of the highlight of my career. It was the best business trip I've ever been able to take to get to go. Now, the next 2 years, I also saw Oklahoma in a semifinal, and they were blowouts against Alabama and LSU. So the Georgia one stands out a little bit more.
Sorry, last question for you. You and I are both very fortunate. We get paid to watch college football, talk about college football. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but what's the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is Saturdays in the fall. The best part of my job is getting to watch, full slate of monitors of game after game after game, getting to talk about them on the air, and frankly, getting to talk about them off the air. Chris Doring, Gene Chizik, Benjamin Watson, that's my team. In the SEC network on Saturdays. And we cherish, honestly, every minute that we get to hang out for those 13 or 14 regular season Saturdays. The bowl trip will be great, but it's honestly, it's getting to spend time in that studio, watching, reacting to, off air, probably more fun than on air most of the time, just because we all have the same passions and mentalities. So you give me those 13 or 14 fall Saturdays in studio with those guys. That is by far my favorite part of the job. And honestly, we've had conversations. The three of them would all say the same thing. And it's not just them. It's our producers. It's our coordinating producers. It's just our team in that building. We have so much fun hanging out with each other.
Well, Dari, thank you so much for being on the show. Good luck the next 3 weeks, and hopefully I'll run into you on the road somewhere this bowl season.
Sounds great, Nick. I look forward to it.
We're going to take a short break and be right back with former Texas Longhorn and NFL safety Kenny Vaccaro. Stay with us.
The forecast for this tax season? It's going to rain refunds. Lots of refunds. File for less and get more with TaxAct, the official tax filing software of bowl season. Go to taxact.com to get started today.
Welcome back to Bowl Season Stories. We are delighted to be joined by former Texas Longhorn and All-American, as well as recently retired NFL safety, Kenny Vaccaro. Kenny, thanks so much for joining us for Bowl Season Stories.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Kenny, welcome to the show. You played in 3 bowl games in your career, including the 2010 National Championship game. Now, the playoffs, the BCS Championship games get a lot of love during bowl season. But I want to talk about your junior and senior year. In the 2011 Holiday Bowl against Cal, you and your defense held the Golden Bears to 7 rushing yards, 195 yards total offense. You had 5 tackles, 21-10 victory. What do you remember about that trip to San Diego?
Oh, well, I like San Diego. That was my first time being in California. I had never really been anywhere growing up in Texas. But for me, that trip, I remember a lot about the game, honestly. I remember they had, Keenan Allen and Marvin Jones. They're still in the NFL right now, thriving. That was their 2 starting receivers. We were going against a good team. It was exciting. I remember during that week, there was a lot of speculation if I would leave my junior year and go to the NFL. And then after the game, I kind of made the decision to come back for my senior year. So that's probably what sticks out the most for me, being in San Diego that week.
Well, you came back your senior year. You played in the 2012 Alamo Bowl, and you went out on top, win over Oregon State. Obviously, that's a big deal for any senior to finish on top. You were fortunate enough to play in the pros, but for many guys, a lot of your friends, your teammates, that was the last football game they ever played in their life. Tell us what that last game is like and why bowl games matter for those seniors.
I mean, it's special. Like we were talking about earlier, it's 4 or 5 days of you getting to spend time with your teammates. So even some teammates that you wouldn't normally spend time with during the season, during the bowl game, you're kind of all together. You're in the hotel, depending on where you're at, you might go to a movie or amusement park and do all these type of activities that the bowl staff has prepared for you. It truly is a great experience. I think on during our bowl game for the Oregon State game, the Alamo Bowl, I think it was Christmas. I think I actually spent Christmas with some of my best friends, and I got to see my family a little bit. But I was really, honestly, I was around my team, which was an amazing experience. And yeah, it is sad, when it's the last game, but it's part of football, right? It's people have to move on and continue their life.
Well, congratulations on your retirement from the NFL. Yeah, you had a very successful career. I know that's a grind, and it was time for you to move on. And for a lot of people, that's hard. But you've been able to make a transition. You have a new business venture called Gamers First, an e-gaming company. Tell us a little bit about that, and what's that all about?
With G1, it's kind of been a project that I've been working on for a long time. Me and my 3 co-founders, Hunter Swinson and Cody Hendricks, we actually started G1 about a year and a half ago, but we actually did actual PR just recently, and that's kind of how it got released to the world. But for me, probably the biggest reason I retired was because I knew the success of G1 predicated if I stayed here, and us 3 took reins of the company and took us, kind of to the promised land. Honestly, we got a tournament tomorrow in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm flying out at 12 o'clock. It's a Halo tournament. It's the first Halo major in 7 years. We have a pro team. We've already placed like top 5 already, which is insane because every other org that we're, going against is backed by millions and millions and millions of dollars. So yeah, it's always been a passion of mine. That's part of the reason the name is Gamers First. I'd been gaming since I was a little kid. My kids do it now. They game all day long. It's funny, but I'd always done that, and it was always a passion of mine. And I always told myself I would make leaving football easy transition. I never wanted football to be my only, like it's consumed me. It's been my identity my whole life. And I never wanted to step away from the game lost. And my passion, in gaming and my other business ventures made it an easy transition for me.
Excellent. Let's talk about bowl games a little bit more. Bowl season in general is one of the many things that makes college football so special. And it's hard. I'm older than you. I look back when I was 19 to 22 years old. It's hard to appreciate what's going on when it's happening. So many great stories on this podcast have come out about the great memories people have had being in bowl games. What advice do you have for today's student athletes, many of which will be suiting up for the last time over the next few weeks in a bowl game?
I guess I would say to truly enjoy it. Treat each moment like it truly is your last. honestly, you don't get that time with your teammates, that time with your coach's back. I remember leaving my rookie year. I would always have dreams about being back in college, at playing back at DKR or being at a bowl game with my teammates. So for me, the best way to not have regrets is just to live in each moment, appreciate your teammates, appreciate those moments you have with each other, because eventually, it goes away.
We all have people in our lives who have kind of helped us get to where we are. I'm sure you have many. Any early mentors for you that stick out in your mind? Any specific teammates at Texas that were inspirational, or how about Coach Brown and the coaching staff? Any stories you want to tell there?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple people I'd like to shout out. I mean, Andy Howard, he's coaching for Brownwood, my high school that I went to. He was the first person that really made me fall in love with being on defense and being a corner and a safety. And probably the most influential man in my life ever has been Dwayne Aquina. He was my DB's coach while I was at Texas. He's now the DB coach at Stanford. But he not only shaped me as a football player, obviously into a first round pick, but he made me into a better man. When I got to Texas, I was a small town kid from Brownwood going to a big city at the time, Austin. And he helped me navigate through that and mature each and every year. I mean, I owe him so much of my success. And then obviously Coach Brown, the way he treats all his players, his kindness, his leadership, the way he treated me and my family, his attention to detail, how he asked about my mom and my brothers and my sisters all the time. That stuff really, really meant a lot to me. And I'd say they shaped me the most in my life.
Well, Kenny, we've taken up enough of your time. Thanks so much for being on the show. I tell you what, it's really fun to see a guy have so much success like you did in your football career, but then to be able to find another passion after football to pursue. So I'm really, really excited for you. Good luck to you in your career after football.
Hey, Nick, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
We're going to take a short break and be right back with the Wasabi Fenway Bowl Executive Director, Fred Olsen. Stay with us.
Bowl season is finally here, and with Bowl Season Radio, you'll be able to keep up with all the action. Bowl season is teaming up with First Team Ventures to provide live national radio play-by-play coverage for 18 college bowl games this season. Bowl Season Radio will give college fans the opportunity to stay dialed in to college football's postseason, whether they are driving cross-country or staying close to home. Celebrate college football and listen to Bowl Season Radio on select stations, satellite radio, or off the Game Day Live homepage at bowlseason.com.
Welcome back to Bowl Season Stories. We are this close to the start of bowl season and excited to have our next guest on, who is launching a brand new bowl, the Fenway Bowl, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Executive Director Fred Olsen is here to talk about that experience. Hi, Fred.
Hello, Angela. Thank you for having me.
Fred, thanks for joining us. You've been involved with many events outside of baseball at Fenway Park, the Frozen Fenway events, the 2015 Shamrock Series game with Notre Dame, Liverpool U.S. Tour, several other regular season college football games. This isn't your first rodeo, but it's your first bowl game. Tell us about your history of producing and running events at Fenway Park in general and how this bowl game came about.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Nick, for having me. And we're excited for the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. But you're right. There's a long story behind it. We like to say everything began January 1st, 2010, when we hosted the NHL Winter Classic with the Bruins and the Flyers. Immediately followed that event a week later with the first Frozen Fenway, the first of four, as you rightly point out. And then from there, really our special events business and hosting non-baseball large sporting events at the ballpark really started to pick up. And on the football front specifically, when we heard from Notre Dame in circa 2013 that we had an opportunity to host the Shamrock Series, of course we jumped at the chance and were able to bring that to fruition in November of 2015. And that was the first football game of any kind at the ballpark in 47 years. Couldn't have started off with a better partners in Notre Dame, and the game went off without a hitch, thankfully. And it was really there that we started to think about, okay, what else can we do in the football space? And then you're right too, we hosted a few more games after that, including the Harvard-Yale game in 2018. And that's right around the time when the bowl opportunity presented itself. So, we're thrilled. We definitely have done this a few times, but the bowl season itself, the bowl week itself is something we're new to. So we'll look forward to having the teams in town for a few more days than we have historically.
One of the many great things about bowl season is the great matchups. You often see teams that are geographically in different places, teams that would never schedule them each other in the regular season come together and play in a bowl game. And you have that this year in the inaugural Fenway Bowl. Virginia taking on SMU, great matchup. Tell us, what can fans of those teams expect when they make the trek to Boston? What are some of your main points of focus for those fans?
Sure. No, we're thrilled to have SMU and UVA in our first year. And one of the things that we drove home to both, to all the partners, the conference partners, ESPN, NCAA, is Boston being a destination city. First and foremost, we're here to showcase Boston and all that has to offer, particularly around the holidays. There's, of course, the history of the country that will be much on display for fans as they make their way around town. And then, of course, it hones in on Fenway Park itself and the great history of the 109-year-old facility. So we believe there'll be a ton of activities for folks to do. We're making sure that they have access to learn about those on the FenwayBowl.com website under the fan zone and things to do, and working with the Convention and Visitors Bureau to welcome everyone coming in from those two markets and hopefully from across the country. So that's as we alluded to earlier. I mean, that's, I think, what's most exciting to us is, we know we're going to have thousands of people coming in, and that's going to help in tourism with Boston in the winter, which is a terrific thing.
You were fortunate to secure a great partner in Boston-based Wasabi Technologies, the premier provider of cloud storage solutions for businesses. What was it about Wasabi that makes it such a great fit for you?
Yeah, exactly. Number one, being a local company, that was our mission from the beginning. You never know how things like that are going to shake out, but it worked out really well in the end. They're up and coming. They're taking on some big players in the tech space. I won't name their names, but in the cloud storage space, there are some big ones. And they definitely, they wanted to get people's attention with that company name Wasabi. So we've had a lot of fun with them on that, and we're certainly happy to be that platform for them to get their name out further. And they're terrific people. Mike Welts is their CMO. He's already become a very close friend of the organization in a short time. And it's a multi-year partnership, which, we're excited about many things, but we're certainly really excited about that. They'll be with us for hopefully years to come, and certainly in the next few years.
One of the, while every bowl game is unique, one of the things they all have in common is they really go to great lengths to try to engage the community. You announced the formation of an executive committee, a 16-member organization that'll provide strategic recommendations to foster the game's educational and community-oriented mission. Talk a little bit about that. What's the Wasabi Fenway Bowl's mission moving forward?
Yeah, so our mission, quite straightforward, is to promote and support and strengthen education and equality in education for everyone across New England. So certainly it's a big task ahead, but we're starting out small with our Fenway Bowl Honor Roll, which recognizes teachers, educators, administrators from across the region who are nominated by their schools. And there are 30 folks who are going to make up this 2021 Fenway Bowl Honor Roll, and they'll be featured on the Boston Globe's website, 3 of which are going to be our monster finalists, and they're going to receive a grant. Thanks again, Nick, to you and to Bowl Season for the great partnership with Extra Yard for Teachers. So on behalf of Extra Yard and Bowl Season and the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, each of those finalists will receive a $5,000 grant that will be used towards their schools. So we're thrilled to start to make those inroads, and there'll be a lot more to come on that front. We're cooperating with the Greater Boston YMCA, with an organization called Boston After School and Beyond, to try to reach kids, and not just the traditional way of going straight to their school, but where do they hang out, how do they spend their time, and being a positive impact as best we can in the community. And I'll just finish by saying, again, when we were approached and really approached the opportunity ourselves, or sought out the opportunity to secure a bowl game, these were the elements that were most interesting to us. The Red Sox, in and of themselves, are big players in the community, and we just want to try to supplement that as best as we can. So we've got a lot of work cut out for us, as I mentioned, but we're thrilled with how we're beginning.
Fred, as I've gotten to know you over the course of the last couple of years, it's clear to me that you're really good at building relationships in business and personally. As a result, you have an expansive network of colleagues and friends in college football, as well as baseball. What are some of the best things you've learned as you've grown your experience and develop this bowl game from concept to reality?
Oh yeah, we've definitely called on a lot of those folks for their opinion, their guidance over the last few years. And I think the biggest thing certainly is to focus on the student athlete experience. It's pretty straight. It's pretty. You can understand why that is, but I think when it's driven home over and over again as the first thing when people answer that question, we've concentrated on that quite a bit. Not to over program it too much, but make sure that we're hitting on those key things that Boston has to offer, and certainly that Fenway has to offer. So the teams themselves will come, for instance, they'll come to Fenway their first day in town for a behind the scenes tour, and for many of them, no doubt it'll be their first time at the ballpark, probably in Boston as well. And again, I think just reiterating the part about the community and making sure that is a focal point of what we're doing. So the football part and all the aspects that go with that, I think, those are going to come back a little bit with muscle memory from 2018 in Harvard Yale. But it's all those ancillary elements. And yes, everybody across the bowl system has been extremely supportive, generous with their time, and generous to even Emily Hamel and everyone at the Yankees, Mark Holtzman, very, very generous with their time and their support. We've been watching them, of course, for years and how successful they've been. And Nick, we know that bowl is near and dear to your heart. So look, if we can be, half as good as them in our first year, we'll be pleased with that.
Well, last question for you, Fred, and I know it's probably hard with your inaugural game being 2 weeks out to focus too far into the future. But tell us, what do you see as the long-term plan for the Wasabi Fenway Bowl?
Yeah, so long term, we're here in 15, 20 years. We really made great strides in our work within the community on the education front. We've got programs in and throughout, New England throughout the calendar year. I think being able to build out that programming, not just in the sort of few months that lead up to the game, is going to be key for us to make sure that we are reaching all corners of this great region, including all the way up in the state of Maine and Vermont. And so, I think building that stable of corporate partners. The executive committee right now, as you mentioned earlier, and thank you for that, it stands at 16 people. We definitely have plans to grow that quite a bit. So there's a lot, and I think we've got that foundation really, as everyone says. We're hoping we've built a good foundation to the house, and we'll keep improving upon that house over these next several years to come.
The inaugural Wasabi Fenway Bowl is scheduled for Wednesday, December 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time at Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts. The game will be broadcast on ESPN. Fred, thanks so much for being on the show. Really rooting for you. College football needs a bowl game in Boston, Massachusetts. I can't think of a better place to have a game than Fenway Park. Good luck this bowl season.
Thank you very much, Nick. Much appreciated.
And thanks to all of you for listening to this week's Bowl Season Stories podcast. Please join us next week when we will welcome another lineup of great guests. If you like the show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating for the podcast. And as always, you can follow all the podcast and bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media at Bowl Season. Thanks for listening.